Think about the world we live in today. Everything is mapped, everything is measured. We have satellites that can see a penny on the sidewalk from space. We feel like we know it all. But the truth is we are living on top of a graveyard of secrets. We like to think of human progress as a straight line. We started in caves, we discovered fire, we built cities, and now we build rockets. But the deeper we dig into the Earth, the more that line starts to blur. We find monuments so massive that no modern crane can lift them. We find tombs protected by ancient traps that still function after thousands of years. We find maps drawn centuries before the lands they depict were officially discovered. Who are the people who moved these stones? Where did they get their knowledge? And more importantly, why did they disappear? Tonight, we aren't looking at the history you learned in school. We are looking at the forbidden history, the history that was too heavy to carry, too strange to explain, or too dangerous to remember. We are going to explore imperial tombs that are still sealed today. We will touch stones that weigh over 1,000 tons. We will look at ancient maps of Antarctica from a time when it was supposedly covered in ice. Before we peel back the first layer of this forgotten world, make sure you are subscribed. Hit that like button and turn on notifications. It helps us keep digging into the shadows of the past. Are you ready? Let's begin. Our journey starts in the heart of China, at a tomb so legendary and so lethal that no archaeologist dares to open it. Deep in the province of Shanxi, China, there is a hill. To a casual observer, it looks like a natural part of the landscape, overgrown with trees and vegetation. But underneath that dirt lies the most ambitious construction project in human history. This is the tomb of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. Most of us have seen the Terracotta Army, those thousands of unique clay soldiers standing in formation. But here is the thing, those soldiers are just the outer guard. They are standing outside the actual tomb. The emperor himself rests inside a massive underground palace that hasn't been opened for over 2,000 years. The scale of this project is hard to wrap your head around. Records from the era claim it took 700,000 laborers to build it. That is more people than the entire population of many modern cities. They didn't just dig a hole, they built a subterranean universe. Ancient historians describe a central chamber with ceilings encrusted with pearls to mimic the stars and the night sky. But it's what lay on the floor that sounds like science fiction. They say the emperor had entire maps of his kingdom laid out, with the Yangtze and Yellow rivers recreated using flowing liquid mercury. For a long time, historians thought this was just a myth, a bit of royal exaggeration. But modern soil tests have revealed something chilling. The levels of mercury in the mound are hundreds of times higher than normal. The rivers of silver are real. And they are protected. The chronicles warn of hidden crossbows rigged to fire at anyone who enters. Whether those mechanical traps still work after 20 centuries is a gamble no one is willing to take. But it's not just the traps stopping us. The mercury vapor alone is lethal. To open the tomb would be to invite a toxic cloud into the atmosphere and potentially destroy the artifacts inside the moment they touch oxygen. So the first emperor waits, sitting in a palace of poison, still ruling a kingdom we aren't allowed to see. Now, if Qin Shi Huang's tomb is a fortress that everyone knows the location of, our next mystery is the exact opposite. Somewhere in the vast, wind-swept wilderness of Mongolia lies the body of Genghis Khan. But unlike the Chinese emperor, the great Khan didn't want a monument. He wanted to vanish. When Genghis Khan died in 1227, his followers went to terrifying lengths to ensure his rest was never disturbed. The legend says that as the funeral procession carried his body back to his homeland, they killed every single person they met on the road. They didn't want a single witness to the direction they were traveling. Once he was placed in the ground, the soldiers took 1,000 horses and rode them over the site again and again. They trampled the earth until it was as flat and hard as the surrounding steppe. They allegedly even diverted a river to flow over the grave so that no trace of a burial could ever be seen. But there is one story that is particularly haunting. It's said that to help the family find the spot again, they took a baby camel and killed it at the gravesite in front of its mother. Years later, when the family wanted to pay their respects, they would follow that mother camel. She was the only living being who could remember where her child was buried, and thus where the Khan lay. When that camel died, the secret died with her. Today, high-tech satellite sweeps and international expeditions have tried to find him, but the Mongolian people often look on with disapproval. To them, the Khan's wish was clear. He wanted to be left alone. For 800 years, the Earth has kept that promise. Two of the most powerful men to ever live, one buried in a palace of Mercury, the other in a grave of absolute silence. Both remain beyond our reach. If we move west from the silent tombs of the East, we find ourselves standing before stones that shouldn't exist. We are told that ancient civilizations were limited by their tools, copper chisels, hemp ropes, and wooden rollers. But in Baalbek, Lebanon, that narrative falls apart. Standing in the foundation of the Temple of Jupiter are three massive blocks known as the Trilithon. Each one weighs about 800 tons. To give you an idea of that scale, that's the weight of two Boeing 747s. They are lifted 20 feet into the air and fitted together so tightly you couldn't slip a business card between them. But the real mystery is still in the nearby quarry. There lies the Stone of the South. It is a single block of limestone weighing a staggering 1,200 tons, and right next to it, researchers recently found an even larger one, estimated at 1,650 tons. There is no crane in the modern world that could easily move these, let alone transport them across uneven terrain and set them with millimetric precision. We are told the Romans built this, but the Romans themselves never claimed they could move stones of this magnitude. It suggests that someone else, someone much older, was here first. Halfway across the world in China, another engineering miracle was discovered by accident. In 1992, a local villager decided to pump the water out of what he thought was a bottomless pond. What he found wasn't a pond at all. It was the entrance to the Longyu Caves. These are 24 man-made caverns carved directly into solid siltstone. They are vast, some reaching 100 feet in height. Every inch of the walls and ceilings is covered in a very specific pattern, parallel grooves carved at a 60-degree angle. It looks like the work of a machine. Here is the problem. There is no record of them, not in the imperial archives, not in local folklore. We have no idea who built them or why. But the math is the most haunting part. Engineers estimate that at least 1 million cubic meters of rock were excavated to create these caves. If you loaded that much stone into carts, the line of carts would stretch for thousands of miles. Yet there isn't a single trace of that excavated stone anywhere in the region. It's as if 1 million tons of mountains simply evaporated. Finally, we go to the banks of the Nile, to the unfinished obelisk of Aswan. This was meant to be the largest obelisk ever carved in ancient Egypt, commissioned by Queen Hatshepsut. It's a single piece of granite, nearly 140 feet long and weighing 1,200 tons. It sits in the quarry, still attached to the bedrock. It was abandoned because a massive crack formed in the stone during the carving process. While the crack tells us why they stopped, it doesn't tell us how they planned to finish. Granite is one of the hardest stones on Earth. To get it out of the ground, they didn't use iron. They used balls of dolerite, a slightly harder stone, to slowly pound the granite away. Think about the labor involved, thousands of men hitting a rock with other rocks for years. But even if they finished it, how did they plan to get it out of a deep pit? How were they going to float a 1,200-ton needle down the Nile without sinking the largest ship of the ancient world. The crack in the stone halted the project, but it preserved a crime scene of ancient technology, a moment where human ambition finally outpaced the physics of the era. Moving from the colossal weight of stone to the strange shapes of life and math, we find anomalies that challenge our understanding of the human story. Sometimes, history doesn't just leave behind buildings, it leaves behind pieces of ourselves that don't quite fit the mold. Take, for instance, the giant of Castelnau. In 1890, a French anthropologist named Georges Vacher de la Puge was excavating a Bronze Age cemetery in southern France. Among the standard remains, he found 3 bone fragments, a tibia, a femur, and a humerus. But they weren't standard. After analyzing the thickness and the length of these shafts, Lapouge calculated that the individual they belonged to would have stood about 11 feet tall. The bones were studied at the University of Montpellier and even peer-reviewed in the journal La Nature. Scientists at the time couldn't explain it. Was this a rare case of extreme gigantism, a pathology of the pituitary gland, or was it evidence of a lost lineage of humans that lived on the fringes of the prehistoric world? The bones eventually vanished into museum archives, leaving us to wonder if the legends of giants found in almost every culture on Earth might have a grain of literal, skeletal truth. While some mysteries are too large, others are small enough to hold in your hand, yet equally baffling. Across Europe, in Great Britain, Belgium, Germany, and France, archaeologists have dug up over 130 strange bronze objects. They are called Roman dodecahedrons. They are hollow, 12-sided shapes with circular holes of varying sizes on each face and small knobs at every corner. Here is the strange part. The Romans were meticulous record keepers. They wrote about their wars, their taxes, and even their favorite recipes. But they never wrote a single word about these objects. No drawings, no manuals, nothing. What's even weirder is that not a single one has ever been found in Rome itself or the eastern parts of the empire. Were they tools for measuring pipes? Were they astronomical calendars used to determine the best time to sow grain? Or were they forbidden religious artifacts used by local cults in the northern provinces? We see the craftsmanship, but we have lost the purpose. Finally, we travel to the jungles of Costa Rica, where the earth itself seems to have been sculpted into geometry. Since the 1930s, over 300 stone spheres have been discovered in the Diquis Delta. They range from just a few centimeters to over 2 meters in diameter, with some weighing up to 16 tons. These aren't natural boulders, they are made of granodiorite, a very hard, igneous rock. They have been pecked and ground into near-perfect spheres. The people who made them, the Diquis culture, didn't have metal tools, and they didn't use the wheel. Yet they managed to quarry these stones, transport them through dense jungle and across rivers, and shape them with incredible precision. Many were found arranged in lines or triangles, pointing toward magnetic north or significant celestial events. They are silent sentinels of a culture that understood the geometry of the stars long before the modern world arrived to map them. We've looked at massive stones and strange bones, but some of the most unsettling mysteries aren't made of rock. They are made of ink and parchment. There are books in this world that feel like they shouldn't exist, texts that seem to hum with a dark, forgotten energy. Take the Codex Gigas, better known as the Devil's Bible. It is a massive volume over 3 feet long and weighing 165 pounds. It takes 2 people just to lift it. But it's the legend behind it that chills the blood. The story goes that in the 13th century, a monk broke his vows and was sentenced to be walled up alive. To save his life, he promised the monastery he would write a book containing all human knowledge in a single night. As midnight approached, he realized he couldn't do it, so he made a different deal. He prayed to the fallen angel, Lucifer, for help. The book was finished by morning. What's truly strange is that modern handwriting analysis suggests the entire manuscript was indeed written by a single scribe. Usually a work of this size would take 30 years of constant labor, yet the handwriting is so consistent it looks like it was produced in a very short window of time. And right in the middle of the book is a full-page, terrifying portrait of the devil himself, the only one of its kind in a medieval Bible. Then there is the Rohonk Codex, found in Hungary in the 1800s. This book is 448 pages of pure frustration for codebreakers. It's written in a script that has no known alphabet. It's not Latin, it's not Greek, and it's not any known runic language. It features nearly 80 illustrations that show a bizarre mix of Christian, Islamic, and pagan symbols all living on the same page. Is it a secret religious code, a lost language from a vanished tribe, or the greatest hoax in literary history? To this day, not a single word has been translated. But the greatest mystery isn't what we found, it's what we lost. The Library of Alexandria was the ancient world's version of the Internet. It held the collective wisdom of humanity, scrolls on medicine, engineering, and histories of civilizations we don't even have names for anymore. We are told it burned down, but the truth is messier. It wasn't just one fire, it was centuries of neglect, war, and religious zealotry. When Julius Caesar set fire to his own ships in the harbor, the flames spread. Later, emperors and conquerors saw the library's pagan knowledge as a threat and slowly picked it apart. We didn't just lose books, we lost our memory. We are a species with amnesia because those shelves went cold. However, sometimes the earth gives back what the fires took. In 1947, a Bedouin shepherd was looking for a lost goat in the Qumran caves near the Dead Sea. He threw a rock into a cave, heard pottery shatter, and stumbled upon the Dead Sea Scrolls. Among the 25,000 fragments was something called the Copper Scroll. Unlike the others made of leather or papyrus, this was etched into a sheet of nearly pure copper. It wasn't a religious text, it was a treasure map. It lists 64 underground locations where gold and silver were hidden to keep them from the Roman army. We have the map, but we've never found the gold. It's a reminder that beneath the sand, the past is still holding on to its most valuable secrets. If you look at any history textbook, you'll see a neat timeline. It tells us that humans were hunter-gatherers until about 10,000 years ago. Then we invented agriculture, settled down, and eventually learned how to work with metal. But there are sites on this planet that act like a sledgehammer to that timeline. The most famous is Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. It was discovered in the mid-90s and it changed everything. It is a series of massive stone circles with T-shaped pillars, some weighing up to 20 tons, carved with intricate reliefs of lions, scorpions, and vultures. Here is the problem: it's over 11,000 years old. According to our traditional timeline, the people who built this shouldn't have had the social organization, the tools, or even the steady food supply to create something this complex. They hadn't even invented the pottery wheel yet. Even more mysterious, the site wasn't destroyed or abandoned, it was deliberately buried. Around 8000 BC, the people who used this temple filled it in with dirt, effectively fossilizing it for us to find. It's as if they were trying to hide a message or preserve a holy place for a future they knew was coming. While Göbekli Tepe is a site we can visit, others are kept under a veil of secrecy. For decades, rumors have circulated about the White Pyramid of China. During World War II, an American pilot named James Gaussman reported seeing a massive, shimmering pyramid in the Shanxi province, far larger than the Great Pyramid of Giza. He claimed it was capped with a jewel-like stone. Today, satellite imagery shows dozens of pyramid-shaped mounds in that region, but many are off-limits to foreigners. Some have been planted with trees to disguise them as natural hills. Are these just burial mounds for emperors, or do they hold evidence of a much older, global, pyramid-building culture that the modern world isn't ready to acknowledge? Finally, we have to look at the Piri Reis map. Drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral, this map is a masterpiece of early cartography. But there is a detail on it that shouldn't be there. It shows the coastline of South America and, most shockingly, the northern coast of Antarctica. Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820. Furthermore, the map shows the coastline without ice. Modern seismic surveys confirm that the map accurately depicts the subglacial topography of the continent, features that have been buried under miles of ice for at least 6,000 years. Where did a 16th century sailor get data from the Stone Age? It suggests that someone, long before written history, had already mapped the entire globe. We aren't the first civilization to master the world, we might just be the latest. History is often written on shifting sands, but sometimes the ground itself disappears. We talk about Atlantis as a myth, but for the people of ancient Europe, a lost world was a terrifying reality. About 8,000 years ago, you could have walked from where London stands today all the way to Denmark. This was Doggerland, a vast, fertile plain filled with mammoth, deer, and thriving human settlements. It was the heart of Europe. But as the last ice age ended and the seas began to rise, the land started to slip away. The final blow wasn't a slow crawl, but a catastrophe. A massive underwater landslide off the coast of Norway, known as the Storegga Slide, triggered a catastrophic tsunami. A wall of water smashed into Doggerland, swallowing it whole in a matter of hours. Today, when fishermen in the North Sea pull up their nets, they don't just find fish. They find prehistoric tools, animal bones, and the remains of a world that was erased by the ocean. But it isn't just water that erases history. Sometimes a people simply vanish into thin air. 13,000 years ago, North America was ruled by the Clovis people. They were masters of stone technology, famous for their Clovis points, perfectly crafted spearheads that could take down a mammoth. They were the dominant culture on the continent. And then suddenly they weren't. Across the entire archaeological record, the Clovis culture disappears almost instantly. At the same time, 35 species of large mammals went extinct. For decades, we blamed climate change or overhunting. But recently, scientists found something startling in the soil, a thin layer of black matte rich in iridium and nanodiamonds. These are the calling cards of a comet impact. It's possible that a massive explosion in the atmosphere shattered the ice sheets and wiped out the masters of the New World in a single afternoon. While some mysteries are born of fire and flood, others are just strange. In the scorched basin of Death Valley, California, there is a place called Racetrack Playa. It's a dry lake bed where heavy stones, some weighing hundreds of pounds, move across the flat earth. They leave long, winding trails behind them in the mud, sometimes for hundreds of yards. For a century, people thought it was the work of magnetic fields, secret pranksters, or even aliens. It wasn't until 2014 that scientists finally caught them in the act. It turns out that under very specific conditions, a thin sheet of windowpane ice forms over the playa. When the sun comes out, the ice breaks into floating panels, and even a light breeze is enough to push these massive rocks across the slippery surface. It's a rare moment where science finally caught up to the mystery, but it leaves us with a haunting question. If it took us 100 years to understand a moving rock, how many other natural phenomena are we still mistaking for the supernatural, or vice versa? We have spent this journey looking back thousands of years, but some of the most unsettling discoveries have happened right under our feet in the modern age. In 2018, in the Sidaba district of Alexandria, Egypt, construction workers stumbled upon a massive black granite sarcophagus. It was the largest ever found in the city, weighing 30 tons and sealed with mortar that hadn't been touched in 2,000 years. The internet exploded with theories. Was it the lost tomb of Alexander the Great? Was there a curse waiting inside? When archaeologists finally pried it open, they didn't find a king. They found a thick, putrid red liquid and the skeletons of 3 individuals. One of the skulls showed a wound from an arrow, suggesting these were soldiers. But the red liquid, which many joked was an ancient energy drink, turned out to be something far more mundane: raw sewage that had seeped in through a tiny crack. Yet the mystery remains. Why bury 3 anonymous people in a massive, expensive sarcophagus made of rare, black granite? It's a reminder that even when we find the physical remains of the past, the why often stays buried. But perhaps the greatest secret of all is the one we aren't allowed to see. For centuries, historians have read the accounts of Herodotus, who described a great labyrinth in Egypt. He claimed it contained 3,000 rooms, half of them underground, and surpassed even the pyramids in its complexity. Most modern scholars dismissed it as a myth until 2008. A team of researchers used ground-penetrating radar at Hawara and found evidence of a massive underground structure. The scans showed a grid of thick walls and large chambers, exactly where the labyrinth was said to be. It was the discovery of the century. But shortly after the findings were presented, the Egyptian government halted all further research. The results were never officially published on a wide scale, and the site remains unexcavated. Why? Is it the cost of the project, the danger of the high water table, or is there something in those 3,000 rooms that would force us to throw away every history book we own? We like to think of our civilization as the pinnacle of human achievement. We have our glass towers and our digital clouds, but history shows us that we are fragile. We are a species that builds, forgets, and then builds again on top of the ruins. From the Mercury rivers of China to the sunken plains of Doggerland, the message is the same. The world is much older, much stranger, and much more crowded than we were ever told. The shadows are still there, waiting for the next shovel, the next satellite, or the next brave mind to look where they aren't supposed to. Thank you for walking through the darkness with me tonight. If you enjoyed this journey into the hidden corners of our past, please leave a comment with the mystery that haunts you the most. Until next time, keep questioning what you think you know, because the truth isn't just out there, it's right beneath you.